All right, all right, all right. Let's get started. Let's get started. Let's get started. My name is Phil, DJ Right Click Valentine. I got the DJ Right Click actually from Kevin Carmignani. I didn't know if you guys knew that. Um, but because he liked my taste in music. Right Click was my Appalachian Trail through hiking name. There may or may not be another journey plan for 2025. I do have a date where I hope to be on Springer Mountain, Georgia on February 17th. I've been in recovery since December 28th, 1987. So this December will be 37 years. Every time I say that, it gets like, uh, it feels like yesterday that I just walked into my first 12-step Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Nervous, maybe a little anxious. You see what I did there with today's topic? And I've been the executive director. I've been at the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery as an employee since January 21st, 1999. So I passed the 25-year mark, and this is my last week as executive director. Last week employed at CCAR. Last coaching for coaches as a CCAR employee. Doesn't mean I won't do more, but I might take a little time off, like 7, 8, 11 years. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding before I do the next one. Maybe just a few days, a few months. Maybe I'll do one next month. Who the heck knows? So today's topic is anxiety. And what was I going to do next week? Oh, next month. Did I tell you the next one, Michael Travis? I want to do next month. We'll have to set a date but we have to set the date where the fish aren't blasting the surface in Rhode Island. So I don't know how you can schedule that date to know the fish aren't going to be there that day. But that one would be on entitlement.
We're going to treat you as a resource and let you pick the date.
Uh, Sometimes I like to be treated like an object. You just tell me when to show up and I'll show up kind of thing. There's something to be said for that on occasion. So I want you guys to introduce yourselves, tell me where you're sitting, because I'm always fascinated by that. Last week I spent 4 days online doing the Advanced Academy for Recovery Coaches. We had 13 different states with the 20 people participating and one person out of Bogota, Colombia, which was kind of fascinating too. So lots of different perspectives and locations. So name, where you're sitting, anything about recovery that you want to talk about, your recovery status. But I'm also curious about a time when you were really anxious. And I got a few ones, but I don't know which ones well, which ones? I know I didn't know I had social anxiety until a mental health person told me that about 25 years ago when I talk about my childhood, not being able to talk to girls. And my story was that I'd be so nervous that my armpits would sweat, and then my armpits would sweat, and that'd make me more nervous. So my face would break out, and that would make me more nervous. So then my armpits would sweat. And I had like this circle going on, and I was just like, just didn't want to go to school, didn't just because I knew I was going to sweat, sweat, sweat. Um, yeah, but I didn't know that was social anxiety. I didn't know that was diagnosable. But I think the last time I was anxious was probably what? Last year. I was going to the dentist to have some work done, and I had this. I didn't have a good childhood experience with dentists. Dr. Kemp used to use drill cavities with no Novocaine. And oh my gosh, it hurts. And I was terrified. So that caused some anxiety. But fast forward to me being 64 or 63 years old, I'm going to have some work done. I have a lot of problems with my teeth because of chemotherapy and radiation and all that kind of stuff. And he was going to do some work. And he was along this a doctor in Manchester, Connecticut. I won't name him, Dr. Sherry Matthews. I said I wasn't going to name him. But anyway, he was in his office on Center Street, and I go up there, and it's 6 o'clock, and he's got a 6 o'clock appointment, and he's he comes out at 5:58 and says, "Okay, I'm finishing up with this guy. There's no receptionist, nothing." And he kind of looks like a wild man. The mask is half hanging on with his gown. And so I hear the drill, and this guy start going moaning, and I start feeling the sweat and the anxiety rising up in me. I say, "You're tough, you can do it." I said, "I'll give him the 6:15." So I listened to this for 15 minutes. 6:15, I'm out. I get up and I walk out. I say, I can't deal with this anymore. I hop in my truck. I pull up to the stoplight, and this doctor who will remain nameless, Dr. Sherry Matthews, he came running out of the building and was like chasing my truck down the stoplight. Come back, come back, come back. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm seeing it. I took off. And, went back and saw Dr. Hambrook in Manchester, which was my good guy. So anxiety still strikes at the strangest moments, and yeah, I'm kind of glad I didn't have him do the work. So that's me rambling enough for a while. Good coffee this morning. I talked like for 6 whole minutes. It's like that might be a record. So name, where you from, anything about your recovery status, if you'd like to share, and an anxious moment for you. Who'd like to start? Thank you, Michael.
My name is Michael Serrano, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. God willing, I'll be celebrating 10 years tomorrow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I
Who,
get to cut. Then I get to cut that ribbon.
who thought that was possible?
I know. I'm in Hartford, Connecticut. And a time that I've been anxious so many times. I don't know. I think one of the times that I was anxious was when I first started working at C-Car. I was a week into after orientation and stuff. They said that I was ready to go into the emergency department, and I was like, I am. And they was like, yeah, by yourself. And I had someone shadow me, and I was like, I need to do this like right, and I'm trying to do this the best way I can, and I think the best way. And I was like so anxious, and then when I realized like I just got to be me.
Hmm.
That's it, right? And it went real good for the week, and I was able to teach others and learn from the people that were shadowing me. But yeah, it was real bad. Like I had to call my mom's, my wife, just calling people back to back, acting like I didn't know what the hell like they knew what to do, right? Like they were the ones about to go to the emergency department for me. But yeah, I was real anxious with that. With that, you talking about with the sweats and stuff. I had to go. I had change a shirt in my car, and I changed. That's fun. Thanks, though.
You just don't seem like the anxious type, Michael. Travis, I'm going to call on you, and then we're going to ask for people to volunteer.
I had a feeling it was coming. Good
Okay,
morning,
good.
everyone. Thank you, Phil.
Hmm.
Travis Cowett here, production team manager at C-Car, coming to you live from Ellington, Connecticut, my hometown. Uh, so anxiety is a big, well, I wouldn't say it's a big part of my life. It's been part of my life for as long as I can remember, really. Phil, I told you a story when I did the podcast about, waiting for my mom to come home from work and driving myself crazy. I can relate to the dentist experience when I was a kid. That was awful. Talking to girls was awful. Used to sweat real bad. So, I can relate to a lot of these things, but
Yep.
um, my healing journey helped me discover that my anxiety, even though felt like it was all the time, was really just an indication that I wasn't taking care of myself. So like great example is last weekend my grandfather passed away, and I wasn't really proactive in like taking care of myself when all that was happening. and I'm just getting more anxious and anxious as every day goes on. So I made the decision to, step away from work and take care of myself and sort of put on that armor, for whatever else is to come. And that's just something I've learned. Um, and that's my story, I think. I'm having a hard time landing on one thing because anxiety is just what I do.
Gotcha. Thank
Anyway,
you, Kevin.
thanks.
Eric.
Hello, good morning. My name is Eric McFeet. I am recently new to CCAR. I am a person in recovery, just past 2.5 years last month. And yeah, I'm not looking back. It's one of those things where I've been sent down this path and I may as well start listening, to the signs. Anxiety for me has been in my life since I can remember, to the point where it got to a panic disorder,
Huh.
where panic attacks, took over my life. And like as I trace the dots back and look at, what created, because like Phil said, like the big thing for me was doctors and dentists. That's where it started. And I'd literally get so anxious I'd start shaking in the chair.
Mm.
Um, but when I connect the dots back, it was due to my substance use that put me in the anxious positions because I wasn't using when I was doing those things, the doctors and the dentists. So really, the the substance perpetuated itself into my anxiety.
Huh.
And one thing fed the other to a point where I just feared doctors and dentists,
Mhm.
and like once I've stopped now and gotten to a stable position, like I can do that again. Like I might need a little help to get through those visits, but like it's nothing like it used to be, So it's crazy when you connect all the dots and put it all in perspective. But yeah, it's so much better now.
Thank you, Eric. Good to see you here. Hi, Sharon.
Good morning. I have to figure out how to unmute. Good morning. I am from a large behavioral health organization out of Cambridge, Mass. And I am not a person in recovery, but I am a very strong ally.
Mhm.
And I love CCAR and I love the work that you do. And thank you, Phil, for all the years. And I feel like you've been such an extraordinary teacher and mentor. So thank you.
Mhm. You're welcome.
Anxiety for me is sort of hitting on everything that's already been said, but certainly in particular around medical stuff and sort of catastrophizing, if you will, about all the things that could happen once COVID hit in particular. And I do think learning more and hearing about other experiences with anxiety only helps me become a better teacher of working with people, of how to manage, because there's no good one way or one rule fits for everybody. So I'm really happy to be here this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome. Chris, do you have your hand up? Are you busy? People still
Nah,
trying to get
I'm
you?
back. Yeah, there was a momentary emergency. All right, I'm Chris. I'm person in recovery. I work at the New London CCAR Recovery Community Center. And let's see, I'm currently in New London. And anxiety, let's see. Um, Anxiety, I've dealt with in my life. I feel like I'm in a good place with anxiety right now. Um, I believe a lot of times when I am anxious, it's because I always say it's in many cases, it's kind of self-imposed. I'm allowing myself to be anxious. So I've become very conscious of that. I've done a lot of work around anxiety where if I'm feeling anxious, I really search and reflect for the purpose or what that's trying to actually do for me in my body, in my recovery, in my life. So I mean, an example I can kind of put to mind was Like my recent move. So I moved from a situation where I was living abroad for about 3.5 years, and I knew it would be a rebuild. I knew I would need to rebuild my community, find a place to live, find a job. And with that, I think comes a lot of stress. And I really I think I was proud of the way I handled myself, and kind of just leaned into a lot of my recovery pathway of spirituality and faith that if I showed up, I continued, that things would be fine and work out, and they have. And I think, I can choose to kind of trudge through that with a lot of anxiety and stress, or I can, just have that kind of underlying guidance that things are okay if I show up for myself.
Mhm.
So I guess that's my example. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Shireen.
Good morning. I'm Shireen. I'm sitting in the Bridgeport C-car building. Anxiety for me, I can every time you tell your story about when you got sick with cancer, it
Yeah.
goes right through my stomach. Like I felt it and I know what he's talking about. And
Mhm.
just that anxiety, knowing or not knowing what you're getting ready to go through, or are you going to be able to pull out of it? It's
Mhm.
very scary, you know. So the decision was mine. Are you gonna live, or are you just gonna give up and die? And knowing the person I am, I'll fight to the bitter end. So I stayed clean, I stayed coming, I stayed in C Car's life. They stayed in my life. That's why when I say I walked through the door and I never turned around, it's a lot that goes with that story, you know,
Mhm.
because that topic today, anxiety, I used to keep a whole lot of anxiety. Today, I'm finally calm. You
Mhm.
know, the
Yeah.
storm, I went through the storm, it's getting calm. I'm a fighter, I'm still here. And when I see you still here, Phil, that's just a confirmation. Like this thing is definitely, we got this beat. You know, cancer don't got nothing on us. We stomp cancer. So
Yeah.
I just thank C Car and I thank all of you because without all of you in my life, it really wouldn't happen for me. You know, it's just a yet. Today is not a yet, it's a do. Thank you, Phil. Gonna
Thank you,
miss you.
Shireen. Just for today. Today I'm doing a good with that. Yeah, just for today. Anybody else like to share name, where you from, and an anxious moment? Anybody else? This is me like, do I have to show you guys how this, how to raise your hand? No, I don't have to do that. Um, Live. Thank you, Danny.
Hi guys, good morning. I apologize for being off video. I'm multitasking here. I'm Danny Vasquez. I'm in Hartford, Connecticut, and I am a person in recovery. I'm also a very anxious person. Um, I noticed that when I was in active addiction, I was a lot more anxious and couldn't really recognize when I was versus being sober and being able to be present and say, hey, you're anxious, do something about this. I also have a social anxiety as far as situations being put on the spot, pictures. Um, but I know that it's something I'm working on, so I force myself to do it, even though I don't really want to. But it's something that I've been working on for a while, and I plan on continuing to work on it. And today I'm just grateful that I'm clear-headed and I can recognize when I'm anxious and not have to drown out with a substance, not to feel that way.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Anybody else? All right, first question. How do you define anxiety? Without looking it up, without Googling it, without reading me a dictionary type definition. How do you define anxiety? What is it? Travis.
I'm gonna do my best to be concise here.
Please,
It's
we got plenty of time, no need.
it's for me, right? For me,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
my body and mind and emotional response to fear of the unknown. think that's as simple as I can get it.
Okay, but how would you define the response? You know what causes it? I'm impressed by that.
Yeah,
What is it? What's the response?
that's a hard one to
Put into
define.
words?
Yeah, it's hard to put into word. It's a physical response for me.
Okay.
It's the feeling in the stomach, that nervousness, that sweat, that ruminating in the brain. I mean,
Yeah.
those are the symptoms, but for me to I want to hear what everyone else has to say about this now. Maybe we can come back to this. Thanks, Phil.
That was clever, Travis. I see what you did there. Okay,
I do
cool.
this a little bit here and there,
I
you know.
know. Hey, Barry, say hello and talk about anxiety. How do you see it? I don't know why we can't hear you. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Are your earphones, are the headphones, is it a headphones thing? We'll come back to you, but it's not working. I don't know what. Michael.
I would say for me, and I don't think anxiety is bad all the time. I was just talking about this earlier that anxiety can be good too, right? My nephew became a father for the first time this over the weekend, and I've been anxious just to see the baby. And I think it's a feeling, right? It could be good or bad, but I really, really can't um give it a name. I don't know what it is. I think it's just a feeling. Like that's to me, that's what you're getting from me, Phil. I'm just gonna shut up now.
Okay. Barry, try again. Nope, not working. All right. Is it Elir? Elir? Do you have your
Yes,
hand up?
it's me, Ilir Sufi.
Elir. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, I kind of agree with Michael. Sometimes like it's like emotional reaction, even like might be not just the fear, might be sometimes from happiness. And I experienced that sometimes when I was traveling. You know, you have this kind of anxiety, like emotional reaction. And yeah, but also like some of the uh, like you say phys symptom, right? Might be also like cognitive and physical and yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious how people define it. Thank you.
You're
Anybody
welcome.
else? We have a small crew, so I need you guys to participate a lot. Even if you don't feel like, even if you're anxious about raising your virtual hand, raise it anyway. Shireen.
I just wanted to answer to the question you had asked about the anxiety. To me,
Yeah.
it means a restless mind. Like my mind, like I want to rest, but my mind just keeps going and thinking about things, getting me in an uproar, just like putting a battery in me. I have to say, pause, stop, you know?
Huh. Thank you for that. Chris.
Yeah, I guess anxiety for me is like it's a feeling of unease, and I also kind of echo what Travis says. It's something like a lot of times I don't have it would stem from lacking having complete control over a situation. So but this feeling of unease or discomfort, I would say.
Okay. Eric. Thank you.
Yeah, so for me, it's a feeling, a physical feeling that stems from my thinking, that I'm gonna lose control, like lose control of my body. Um, and yeah, that's it for me. Like it's a builds and builds for me to a point where I feel like I'm gonna lose control,
When you say,
like
can I ask you another question?
physically, like physically lose control of my
Yeah.
body's functions.
So like next thing you're gonna be peeing and pooping or puking or what? I mean,
No, just like shaky.
I know. So losing control. So I'm curious if you played it, what would happen, do you think? What do you to losing control? What would happen?
What would happen?
If you just lost control, what does that mean?
Shaking,
Okay.
heart beating through your chest.
Ooh, heart gonna explode or something like that.
Yeah, heart explosion,
Ooh, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've taken it to those levels,
Yeah, okay.
but it's
I hear
definitely
that.
a physical for
All
me.
right. Thank you, Danny. There you
Hi
go.
guys, sorry again. So to me, anxiety is my reaction, right? My body's reaction to something I'm uncomfortable with, whether it be a situation, a conversation, anything, I know that when I'm anxious in a room full of people or with people that I don't know, I kind of stand to the side away from everybody, and that's just what makes me comfortable. But it definitely is, the body's reaction to something you fear or something you're uncomfortable with.
Gotcha. Anybody else? When you say everybody uses that term anxiety, what is it for you? What does that mean? Barry, try again. Oh, you were unmuted there for a second. There you are. Oh, we still can't hear you, dude. Darn it. I like hearing you. Travis says maybe did you log out and log back in? Sometimes that works, but I don't know. Yeah, it's not working. Can't hear you. It's those earbuds probably. They might be muted. You never know. All right. So a lot of times when we talk about these topics, we get into the 4 quadrants. We talk about physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. When you think about anxiety for you, what quadrant does it reside in primarily? Where does it start? And why? Chris.
Okay, so for me, in my pathway of, I guess, life or recovery is spiritual. So typically, if I'm experiencing anxiety, like I like the phrase, like if I lose connection with my spiritual side, then I ask like who's moving. So it's usually something to do with me. Um, so I need to kind of like reconnect and lean into that quadrant. And I think we've talked about this before, but I feel like when I do that, then if I'm experiencing changes or deficiencies in the others, then by focusing my attention on that, kind of organically, I receive the benefits in the others. So
Do you think your anxiety starts spiritually?
I think if I'm experiencing anxiety for myself, I think it's because I'm either projecting into the future, dwelling on a situation I don't have control over, and not trusting or leaning into my spiritual side.
So that sounds like it starts as a mental process, the way you're thinking, maybe. Maybe?
Yes, I would say I would say that would come after, because I think it starts with I lose some sort of spiritual connection, and
Okay.
then right after, yes, the mental side, the thinking starts, and the
All
spot.
right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Eric.
That was an interesting take, Chris, because I was so hell-bent on mental. For me, I think it does start mental and it moves into the other quadrants and affects them from the way I think.
Uh-huh.
So I think it starts mentally, moves into my physical feelings, affects my emotional state, for days until it's addressed. And I think the only way, not the only way, but I think one of the effective ways that I can address it is actually through like physical exercise and talking through it. I think that gets the me back to like a centered state of mind.
Thank you. Shireen.
Mine would start at emotionally.
Huh. Okay.
Very much emotionally. It's like I feel like I just want to stick myself into somebody to make sure that they get it. Like to just like if I could just hold them. So my feelings come out more to the fact where as hard as I want to be, I'll break down and cry at a drop of a dime. So that's why I would say emotionally. And then it goes to my mental because I'm feeling what the other person's going through. And it's not even my body, but it's like I can feel whatever they're going through. And spiritually is I pray that we all make it, but it starts for me emotionally.
You sound very empathic. Are you an empath? You feel what other
Oh,
people feel?
no, well,
Yes, you do. You just said you did.
yeah, somewhat, but I don't want to be like I'm some old genie in a bottle.
No,
No.
I don't say I didn't mean it that way. What I found with people who are highly empathic is they they are usually outstanding recovery coaches, but it's their blessing and their curse because the blessing is you can feel and understand deeply what a person is going through.
Mm.
But the hard part is how do you process that feeling too? And you talked about that a little. So, so how do you get rid of that feeling once that's done? Yeah.
I
Sharon.
gotta go get coached. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Well said.
Such an interesting question. For me, I notice, I should say, I thought it always started in the physical, but I think that's when I notice it because it's
Yeah.
become discomfort and
Yeah.
problematic and all of that. But when I really stop and reflect and sort of think about it, I think it does start for me more in the mental and spiritual first, that something's not quite right, whatever that might be, whether maybe it was a decision I made in life or whatever, something is not hitting the values that I really want in my life. Therefore, something is off. And I notice it when it hits the physical, but I think it had been starting, whether it's hours before, days before, in another phase, if that makes at all sense.
Oh, it does. That's an amazing observation. Thank you. Um, Michael, what quadrants did start for you?
It's definitely the mental. I get in my own head a lot. But it's funny that someone mentioned the spiritual because I was just talking to my wife on Saturday when we left the walk, and we was talking about that because we stopped going to this church that we were like I was the senior deacon of the church, right? And for me to just all of a sudden I didn't feel right. They were doing things that it was just not right, and I felt it like in I know in my mind and in my heart and in my soul, I just felt like it wasn't right. But I felt these past months, I've been feeling like disconnected spiritually, right? So, and it's funny because I'm not the type of person that gets anxiety anymore, right? Like I don't really get anxiety like that.
Yeah.
But I've been getting anxiety, but it's not a bad anxiety like a debilitating where I want to run and hide and stuff, but it, it's questionable, right? And it got to the point where we spoke about it. My wife and I spoke about it Saturday, and we were gonna go Sunday, yesterday to visit a church, and a lot of things happened at night that stopped us from visiting and that. But I got to do some things yesterday and that it relieved me from some anxiety, right? That I was get it out the way and I feel a lot better. But it definitely starts here in the mental, but
Hmm.
the lack of spirituality is like it can I think if I stay without the spirituality for a very long time, it can have an effect on everything around me, right? So, but I think it's self-awareness that I have on myself that I need to work on that. And hopefully it'll get a lot better.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I think it was Chris that was talking about when the connection isn't what it was, somebody moved, and it's usually not what we are connected to. It's usually us that we move some way or another. Yeah. What quadrant, Travis?
Um, a lot of great things being said, by the way. For me, it's mental. I'm just a thinker. I'm constantly ruminating. Like I really wish it would stop up here sometimes. It takes some work, and that makes me emotional, right? Then we move into that quadrant. When the emotions get real, it becomes
What kind of
those
emotions do you have when you're anxious?
Well, like Michael said earlier, it can be positive or negative. So
Mhm.
if it's something that's really bothering me, they're more negative emotions, right? Fear being the main one. I think that is like the main driver
Yeah,
of
yeah,
anxiety in my life is just
yeah.
uncertainty, right? And when I'm not addressing that emotional need, it becomes a physical problem. My anxiety will get so bad that I'll actually gag while I'm brushing my teeth because of how my stomach feels. It can get really, really bad, and it compounds. So like if I don't address that physical issue I'm having, Eric brought up exercise. That's a great way for me as well. It becomes a spiritual question. I start questioning my existence. Things get really bad. I've only been there a few times in my life, but um, I try to be vigilant right from the get go if I can. Don't think about it, but you know where that leads us. That's not always a good thing either, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. I think too, for me, I've heard, the spiritual component is interesting. And, you know, since I've been in recovery, these 36 years, Sandy and I've had different phases. We were very active in the Christian church. And one of the things they don't often talk about is the dark side, and a lot of times they would say that's an attack, from the dark side and all that. However you think about that, I've pondered that at times, and it could be, but the last many, many years, I've settled from like I hang my hat on one phrase that if my God is for me, who can be against me, right? So I just always want to fill myself with spirit. Don't worry about the dark side or the attacks. Um, I think maybe for me, it it resides in all quadrants. At different times, it may start in different places. Like, I think looking at them building the house next door, 8 feet from my property line on a place we thought we were going to retire. And that's like a mental choice, right? How I think about that. And every time I think about it, and I go into my little place of like asking, okay, God, I need a little help here. I always get two words that I can see, sense, read, feel, and those two words lately have been leave it, which kind of pisses me off. He just says leave it, don't even, okay, because I could choose to work myself up over that. A lot like when I knew what was happening in the dentist's office last year, I chose to let that just drive me out of that place. I wasn't going to do it. I'll figure out my teeth later. Um, I think also I've become more and more aware that my anxiety increases the more I sit around. If I sit and kind of do nothing, then after a while, I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I just like my mind starts racing, my body is like saying, do something, and I just don't. I have to be, and I can see it in my sons, especially Matthew, who's 22. He's 3 years in recovery now, but he's a trainer for other people. He works in 2 gyms, but he works out because that alleviates his anxiety, just that physical activity. So it's simpler for me going for a walk, going for a paddle, doing any of that stuff. I think when I was at most peace and when I was in my life, the most peaceful time was when I thru hiked the Appalachian Trail because of the amount of physical activity. When I was just walking to exhaustion every day, you don't have time to be anxious. Say, what are we going to do about getting around? I don't know. Figure it out when we get there. I don't really, didn't get, or it looks like a thunderstorm's coming. Yeah, it does. I guess we got to set up our tent, It's not like getting anxious over it or anything. It didn't really matter, right? So, any other thoughts about quadrants? But I do think it manifests itself physically. I think the last thing I wanted to say about that was it's almost like we all have this, and I don't want to get too like new agey stuff, but it's like this vibrational energy. We all have that, right? We have energy. I just think when anxiety just amplifies your natural vibrational energy, where it starts to feel like we just increased the voltage somehow. And it's not always pleasant when the voltage gets increased. At times it works for us, at times it doesn't. So it's all connected, I think. We talked a little bit about how I handle my anxiety. It's like I can't be physically exhausted and anxious at the same time. That doesn't happen the way I'm wired. What are some other ways that you handle your anxiety? What do you do? Danny.
Hi guys. I go to therapy. I do telehealth. I see a therapist every week, and sometimes we don't talk about anything. Sometimes we talk about him, but at least there's someone there to help me. I do have, some coping skills as far as what I can do, grounding techniques and stuff like that. But I do keep myself going to therapy, to keep working on it.
What's one grounding technique that you use?
So my most common one is I'll take a piece of candy or chocolate and put it in my mouth, and then I will focus on what I'm tasting. Is it salty? Is it sweeter? Is it dark chocolate? Is it, milk chocolate? Whatever the case may be. But it reels me back in. It gets me centered, and then I try to move on from there.
How simple and wonderful. Thank you for that. I don't think I've ever heard that before. That's cool. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
How do you handle your anxiety? What do you do once you're feeling that way? Sometimes anybody bark? Michael, do you bark? So like sometimes if I'm feeling anxious and I just walk in the room, I just gotta go there, like I just let it go, just relieve it.
I howl sometimes when
Yeah.
the moon is full.
You do? Well, there you go. I'm just saying, sometimes you got to do things like, how do you let go of your anxiety? Sharon, how do you let go of yours? What do you do?
I'm very similar to yourself, other than the howling and barking. Let's take that off the table.
Have you ever
immediately.
tried it?
Immediately, I have not. I'll take that under consideration. Okay.
You want to practice
I'm a
now?
big-
Give it your first time.
I decline. I'm a big
Okay.
walker and hiker, being out in the woods, being out kayaking, being outside, regardless of the weather, even if it's downpouring, being outside really does it for me. I also meditate quite a bit. So I meditate a couple of times a day, but it's taken me years to get to the point of being able to really have a very strong effect because I get into my head too much, so it takes a while really to get grounded. But I persisted, and now it's my part of my regular routine. And I think breathing and calming and grounding for me has been extraordinary.
Yeah, I know that well, tomorrow is October 1. So before I went through this last round of cancer, I was doing yoga regularly, not intense yoga, but just enough to try to keep me somewhat flexible. And one of the cool things about that was I'm gonna send whatever. At the end of the session, they had you like lie down with your arms out and your legs apart and just lay there grounded for 3 minutes. And I thought 3 minutes, you can't like, and just try to be quiet and calm yourself. It was such a simple thing. And talk about feeling grounded, laying on the ground and just trying to be quiet and just relaxing. I mean, something so simple can be very powerful. At least it was for me. Somebody else, what do you do to help with your anxiety? Shireen?
A nice motorcycle ride.
You really? I wouldn't have guessed that. That's pretty cool.
Been riding for years. It just looking through I wear full face, so just looking through there, sometimes you see the people climbing the mountains, just different things. It's so soothing. The ride is so comfortable. Don't do it in Connecticut though, because I learned they can't drive out here. But take nice mountain rides going up and see scenic routes. So mind and breathtaking.
Wow. I kind of like that answer. I haven't heard that one, but yeah, good for you. What else? Trying to give everyone some techniques, some things they could try, maybe a little bit differently. Yeah. Chris.
Yeah, I think if I had to like surmise it, I would just say self-care is kind of like the preventative maintenance, if and especially remaining consistent with some of these things, such as consistent spiritual connection. Um, Physical exercise is huge for me on a daily basis in the morning. And like clean eating, and then doing my part to maintain relationships that have value and importance to me. That helps like mitigate it. And then I would say like in the moment, what things that bring me out of anxiety are mindfulness. And I think like mindfulness is probably my biggest one, and then breathing techniques.
I think one of the questions for me that I've learned over the years too, and I'm sure Michael and well, Travis isn't here anymore, but Barry, they've all heard me say it, is how important is this? To try to get perspective on whatever I'm feeling at the moment. How important is this? So we're about 50 minutes in. What does anxiety? Oh, Chris, was that from before, or did you raise your hand again? Before? What does anxiety, or talk to me about anxiety as it relates to recovery coaching? Who wants to give that a shot? Shireen.
Patience. Even if that's when you're managing your stuff, definitely comes in, because you have to manage your stuff in order to able to help them with theirs. You can't show anxiety. Picture both of you having anxiety. That would be a hot mess. So in other words, I would say managing your stuff to help somebody with their anxiety. And sometimes during the conversation, you end up finding a calm in that coaching with the person.
Yeah, thank you. Patience with anxiety. Yeah, Sharon.
I think recognizing that most people have some degree of stress, anxiety, something, and anytime you're talking about change, right, changing from baseline,
Mm-hmm.
that just recognizing if the person isn't able or willing to discuss and disclose their anxiety, just maybe assuming, I don't love that word, but assuming that it's there so you can address it in a non-confrontational kind of way, sort of bringing it into the approach, integrating it in so people feel more comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Eric?
Yeah, you know, a lot of anxiety comes from fear of the unknown. And I read an interesting but very simple quote a while back that tells you to take it to the worst possible scenario. So, like, when I'm worrying about something, I often think, what's the worst thing that can possibly happen from this? Whatever's, and it's usually not that bad if it's bad at all. Um, and I had related it to like in my a prior life, like I was scared and anxious to go out in a new career path and purchase this condo that I wanted to rent, for instance. I was so scared to do this. I'd never done it. And I
Mhm.
thought, and I read that and I was like, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? And the answer was there really wasn't much bad. Like I could get out of this situation if I needed to. And it turned out to be a great decision. So I like to break it down that way.
Cool. Yeah, I think as you get older too, perspectives shift, and what you thought was really important and driving your decisions, and they don't end up being all that important anymore. So there's perspective. When Chris was talking about mindfulness, I really think about staying in the moment, staying in the present, looking at, I mean, just like what Danny said, like putting the chocolate and just focusing on that's perfectly in the moment, right? Stay in the moment. It's hard to be anxious. Thank you for that, Eric. Anybody else? What's the recovery coaching? Why are we talking about anxiety and recovery coaching? Chris, go ahead.
I mean, what comes to mind when I think about that is that, and like one of the principles of managing your own stuff is that if I come in, kind of overtly anxious, that can project onto the other individual. So I think it's like a responsibility as a recovery coach to, manage this or at least care for it and be cognizant of it because I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I'll speak for myself. I've been in rooms before where around, very anxious individuals, and it's like you can feel the energy, and it almost,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I'm very protective of my peace at times, so I have to limit, like when do I have to step away from this, or try to be solution oriented, but also like not at the detriment of losing my peace. So I think it's important that, from a recovery coaching that we're aware of it, like when we're in these situations and try to do our best to, obviously anxiety is part of life. So, managing it so it doesn't, I guess, harm the person that we're working with, as much as we can.
Yeah. And so when we think about anxiety and recovery coaching, we have two sides of that relationship, right? We have the recovery coach, and then we have the recovery. So we've talked a little bit about both. So if you're anxious in a moment as a recovery coach, how do you manage that? Besides what we said, anything else? How about the recovery's anxiety? How would you manage someone who, oh, Michael, you had your hand up. Sorry, thanks.
It's okay. I would just say it's good to have a supervisor or a few coaches at hand, right, where you can ask them some questions because sometimes, and I know most of the times for me, anxiety can stop me from doing things. So I could just imagine that a recovery with a lot of anxiety, they don't want to do anything, right? So to be like an accountability partner for them, right? To be able to help them out through that. But I think if you have your own anxiety, is the best thing to do is reach out to individuals that can help you out with that, because it's going to prevent you from moving on too, right?
Yeah, and you brought up a point that I do want to address a little bit. But yeah, Eric, thanks.
Something I liked when I'd go through a anxious moment is someone validating my response. Tell them it's okay and normal to feel the way you're feeling right now. Helped me through a lot of situations.
Yeah, for sure. Um, what at what point, and Sandy and I have kids and they have varying levels of anxiety. I've talked about my anxiety as a kid. I don't know if it was, I medicated it a lot. Alcohol definitely made the anxiety go away for me. I mean, quickly. Marijuana, not so much. Cocaine, not so much. But marijuana for a while, but then I just got paranoid after I smoked too much of that. But um, and then I was a little anxious, like early years of recovery, then I either worked through it or outgrew it. And I have moments now and then, but I would consider myself mostly at peace. I don't really get too anxious about anything anymore. When does anxiety become debilitating? Michael, you use that term like you can't move. What's the level? Is it different for anyone or yeah. So when's it become debilitating? And how do you know if somebody's just like saying, because I've heard it at CCAR over many years, where employees have to have a mental health day because they're having anxiety. And I'm like, that never would have flew 20 years ago. That just wouldn't have had any like excuse me, what? Sandy used the term time to put your big girl pants on and go to work, and then whether you were frightened or scared or whatever. So any thoughts about that? When's it become debilitating and is it something that you give people time off for? Is it the recovery says I can't talk to my coach today, I'm too anxiety ridden? What's up with all that? Again, I need somebody to help me participate. Barry, did it work yet? Do you work yet? Do we got any sound from you, Barry?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, could you step out real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you had
That's
something.
okay. That's okay. We was waiting on the call back. What's going on? I'm sorry. I kind of got distracted a little bit. I know we were talking about anxiety, and the last thing I really heard was you talking about like having recoveries with anxiety. And
Yes.
and how do I manage mine? How do I manage that? First of all, I try not to get in a coaching situation when I'm anxious. I try to eliminate that before I get, and get with a recovery. And usually I do. I work in the emergency department. I always, before I went into coaching, when I always prayed before I walked in, I asked God for help, and then I knew He was going to help me regardless to what the situation was.
Mm-hmm.
Recoveries with that are anxious, I usually just try to let's just start from where we are right now. Ask them a question, how can I help you right now? And
Mm-hmm.
usually they'll yeah. I'm gonna have to go. This is Stonington. This guy's getting to bed. I'm sorry, I apologize, y'all.
No, that's all right. You say good stuff. It's like right in the middle of coaching somebody. We're heightening Barry's anxiety. It didn't mean to. Shireen.
I would say use a nice calm with them. Like give them a feel to let them know that they are safe. because sometimes their anxiety is so high and it's really due to fear. So when you give them a kind heart, I don't know, a kind smile, and let them know how, just as gentle as you can, how can I help you today? Letting them know like they are important, the most important person in the room, that they matter. A lot of times it helps them to fall off with the anxiety, and then they'll start to open up once they, because a lot of times they get the feel from off of you. If you give them a cold feeling, they're not going to open up but so much because they feel closed, like you're not receptive to them. So give them a warm, receptive manner, and a whole lot can happen. A whole pathway can open up that they could receive help. Closed mouths doesn't get fed, so they'll be feeling like I can open up. I can tell this man I feel comfortable in her. So that's what I would say, because and it helps their anxiety to come down, because a lot of times people are so afraid when they come in for help. It's like getting in there, it's hard, it's scary, but once they get in there, they adapt, and the shoulders start going down and they feel a part of. So we got to try to make them feel a part of from the door. How can I help you today? I got you. It's okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That was wonderful. Any other thoughts about the anxiety? So about, and as it relates to recovery coaching. I think why I wanted to address this topic too is it seems younger generations, or the generation that's coming up, my kids, are dealing with it. It's a topic that I certainly didn't know about or talk about as a kid. I just thought it was normal, and people, you got nervous and people felt a certain way. So more and more kids, and I say kids, I'm going to be 65 on Saturday. So um, a lot of young people talk about this openly. Any thoughts about that? Travis, you're young. Is it a common topic? Because I think you had a podcast talking about this at one time,
I
didn't you?
did. That's how I found CCAR, which was interesting. But yeah, no, I would say amongst all my friends and even my male friends, we're all very open about our mental health struggles and anxiety or whatever it is, just because I mean
So
we see it here how much a community can help people,
is
right?
I think what I'm trying the question I'm trying to wrestle with, that I'm
Yeah.
wrestling with, is anxiety normal for most people, or is it really a mental illness or health condition that needs to be addressed?
I think it can be both.
Oh, well, God, you just did a fill on me.
Yeah, it could be both. So like for me, I
Oh.
mean, there was certainly a point where it was debilitating on a day-to-day basis. But I
Mm-hmm.
know since I've done the work and learned more about myself, I'm able to sort of deal with that, right? Where some folks, they wake up with it every day, and no matter how much work they put in, maybe it's medication that helps get them to a base level. It's like when we talk about recovery with folks, it's gonna look a little bit different for everybody. And I think opening up about it and discussing it, what it looks like for me, what it might look like for Eric or for Michael, that helps us gain that understanding and support others that we might be working with, right?
Yeah, thanks. Barry.
Yeah, you know what? I think for so long, anxiety needed to be hidden, right? Like we didn't want anybody to know that we felt anxious or had
Mm.
fear. I know that in part of my life, drugs was what I used that for, that to kind of cover the anxiety and the fear. I wanted, we want to be cool. We all want to be calm. We all want to appear to be okay with whatever's going on. And on the inside, a lot of times we're not. And I think it's a normal reaction. But what happened in recovery is I learned a better response to my anxiety. You know what I mean? Like I learned how for it not to overwhelm me. And to be quite honest, it don't last quite as long because I got like some solution points now. Like I
Mm.
know when I start getting that racing heartbeat or that bad energy, and sometimes it's good energy. Like if I remember the first time I had to speak at a meeting, the anxiety was real, real powerful, right? But
Sure was.
It was real power. And what happened was that after I did it, then I started to find ways to make that anxiety subside. And I realized that it wasn't even, I don't know what I was afraid of it, and first of all. And when I started to find solutions, my anxiety is not as bad. And I get to solutions a lot quicker now. It comes, man. Listen, what gets me, I get a bill in the mail that I know I paid. You know what I mean? And I get anxious in that moment, right? In that moment when I can't believe they sent me this, and then I calm down, right? And I know all I got to do is make a phone call, and then get in a solution. So I've got some tools a lot better than I had before for anxiety.
Do you still get anxious when the police car pulls out behind you?
Not really, a little bit. I don't know. I peek. I'm good now, so I don't have to worry about it. I've been good a good little while now.
All right, good, good, good. Glad to hear it. Michael.
Fill your trip. I remember when I got my first interview, and because the first interview that I had was with Tamara. She did a phone interview, and then I got set up to do the interview, and it was Jolie, Rebecca, and Jennifer, and I was anxious. I was like, wow. And then the interview after that, they added Stacy in the mix, and then I started going, why did they add Stacy in here? And I got a lot of anxiety, like, and then I caught myself. I go, oh, wait. I live with 3 women. Why am I why am I getting all this anxiety when I caught myself in my head that I was like, I don't need to be anxious.
Mhm.
It's gonna be all right. And it went really good. It went, here I am. That's how good it went, right? And I didn't show those. I went, but right before going in there though, I had this anxiety in my stomach, and it was like, oh, and then all of a sudden I asked myself, like, why am I feeling this way? And I caught myself. And then I had a great time, and it was all good. But we always catch ourselves in that little heat of the moment. We catch ourselves, and we either fumble the ball or we don't, right? We score. I don't know.
So let me just ask you while you're still here, and I'll ask everyone, but Michael, I'm curious what you're thinking. So when I was like, if I had to go, I was relating having to speak, like deliver a keynote, right? The
Mhm.
moments before, am I anxious or am I nervous? And is there a difference or are they the same in your mind?
For me, I'm anxious. I'm never nervous when I'm going to speak in front of people anymore. I used to be a lot, but now it's just, I want to get it over with. I want to rip that Band-Aid off already. But
So so
I
what's
don't
the
get
difference?
scared
What's the difference in your mind?
or scared if I fear something, I'm running away.
So that's anxious?
I think it's got to do a lot more than anxiety. I think a lot it you just can't base that on anxiety because anxiety can happen at any moment, and I think is your reaction to what you do with anxiety, right? So if I say, if somebody was to ask me to speak and then I go no, right? That's my reaction to my anxiety. Like, I'm not going up there.
Yeah, so I don't, maybe, but I think there is a difference, and I'm trying to wrestle it, work it out in my head, the difference between being nervous and being anxious. And what I ultimately, and I'm kind of talking myself full circle, so you teach best or facilitate best what you most need to learn,
Hmm.
is I think some people use anxiety as a way to escape.
Oh yeah.
And then I was saying, so I said to myself, so what's that got to do with you, Phil? And because I think the coach in me is, but are you anxious when you say you are?
No,
No.
no. Unless unless right, we having a conversation, right? And it's just me and the person, and I can be that truth teller at that moment and just be like, yo, I'm getting a lot of anxiety here. Because maybe the person, not the person is giving me anxiety, but their situation, right? And there's some people that were coaches with us, and then they said they couldn't do it anymore. And I always think that maybe anxiety got in their way of not being able to really, really get away from that anxiety. I don't know.
Well,
This is a great topic though, Phil.
because I think I think as a coach, our art of coaching is to help people reach their full potential, whatever they do that. So when do you push somebody to do something even though they're experiencing anxiety? How do you know when that is? Because all you got, especially Travis and Michael, and well, I think, I don't know if Barry's still here, but you've all experienced me pushing you to do something you didn't really want to do, right?
Yeah.
So how do we do that? How do you know what that is, when that is?
I don't know. I think that's when that spiritual connection comes in, right? And people don't understand it. They'll call it something else, but I understand it to be a spiritual connection. And some people just don't see the signs. And sometimes I don't see the signs, right? But anxiety will play a big role in that, because if I'm anxious at the moment, it's gonna be like something in front of me that's gonna
Right.
really, it's gonna block me from seeing what the bigger picture or where I need to be, right?
Right. So let me put you be my coach. I'm gonna give you a scenario.
All right.
All right. So I'm working in this job that's paying me like a certain salary,
Mhm.
but I have an opportunity that I'm interested in to take over an organization. And but I say, Michael, I'm really anxious about doing that. I don't think it's the right move. What question would you ask me?
I would ask you, why don't you think so? Why
I
don't you
think
think it's the right move?
because I'm very comfortable in the role I have. We're making enough money.
Okay.
All of that is new to me. I don't think I'm as good a candidate as they think I am. Uh, and I have a lot of doubts whether I can do that job.
Well, first of all, I would say I know you personally, so I would say I agree with the individual saying that
Mhm.
you would take this job, you would do well. Um, I would just put it back on you, Phil. Like, where's your
Oh,
heart at? Where's your heart at?
okay. Here's another scenario. Uh, hey, Michael, it's the first thing in the morning. Michael, I need to talk to you. I said,
Hey, hello? Yeah, yeah, okay.
like,
Di-
I'm really vibrating. I'm like hyped up. It might be too much coffee. I'm so anxious though. I'm thinking about calling out to work. I don't want to go into
What
work.
what brought you this? What brought this anxiety on? Are you safe right now?
No, it's Cafe Bustelo.
Oh, it's understandable then.
That'll do it.
Stay
Well, still,
home, stay home.
it doesn't really change the fact that I don't want to go to work today because I'm too anxious.
So, and I would ask this, and this is a conversation that my daughter and I, because my daughter does this a lot, where she gets anxiety and she does that, and I would say, um, do you have plans for later?
Hmm.
What are your plans for later?
So she doesn't want to go to work or school
Yeah,
because she's feeling anxious. So
yeah.
why
And
do you
this is
ask her
some
about her
I asked her
plan?
that because in an hour or two from now, she will be on her phone, not really with the anxiety anymore. So I came to that conclusion that I would ask her that, and she'll go, "Well, I'm going to be doing this and that." She goes, "No, you know what, Dad, you're right. I'm gonna just go to work because I'm going to be in 2 hours from now. I'm going to be doing this anyways." And it would be something
Okay.
that I would just ask her. And it's nothing that I would never judge you, Phil. If you didn't want to go to work, Phil, that's on you. You don't have to go to work, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
You got
Yeah.
time to take off.
All right. So Kevin asked a great question too, that doesn't feeling anxious mean that you are in fact anxious? Yeah, well, that's all right. Are you anxious when you say you are? Any other thoughts about dealing with the recovery's anxiety or what we had just talked about? Please, somebody else jump in. I'd appreciate it.
All right, so I'm gonna get to the bottom of what's happening in the chat right here. So Kevin and I are having a little back and forth here. And this is something that I've learned. And again, this is my process. This is my experience with anxiety. I was really going through it at one point. I was in therapy, and my therapist said, hang on a second. Are you anxious or do you feel anxious? And the goal of that question was to help me avoid identifying with my feelings. Because me, the ruminator that I am, the person that will overthink, it will consume me. So, that was really helpful because my therapist, we'll call her my coach in this scenario, was
Yeah.
able to help me understand my feelings and validate them. And then you can go from there. Okay, now what are we going to do about this feeling as opposed to an entire state of being? Does that make sense?
It does, because it's amazing what a simple word can do sometimes. Switching I feel anxious to I am
Right.
anxious, which is also almost saying I am anxiety, that there's
Right.
so much power in the word saying I am ... Yeah. Kevin.
All right. I don't want to be argumentative with anybody. I'm just saying if you feel something, isn't that where everything is to begin with? Isn't that all of life is, right? So if I'm feeling anxious or scared, then I'm scared. I can also undo that if I know how,
Mhm.
right? I don't know. That was all my point was.
No, and I don't think you're being argumentative at all. I think it's a complex issue and we're just exploring different sides of it. It's kind of like we could like talk about I'm in recovery when I say I am, right? I'm anxious when I say I am. And if I want to be anxious, damn it, coach, you can't make me not be anxious. Or if I'm open to saying I don't enjoy feeling this way, then what are some of your thoughts to help me not feel this way? I think it's that subtle difference of it's the art of coaching. The art of coaching will tell us when to be gentle and kind with somebody's anxiety or when to kick them in the butt to be a little stronger, right? Or to nudge them or encourage them to take a walk through it. Because I can't tell you how many times I had that, like, I'll have that, you take a breath, like, I gotta go do that meeting. I don't really want to go do that meeting, or I gotta go do that. Even like my first AA meeting, I sat in the parking lot, I think 3 different Wednesdays before on the fourth Wednesday, I got up enough courage to walk over the threshold and go in. Sometimes I almost think and this is maybe me projecting it on other people, is that my anxiety is kind of like the coward in me that just keeps me from doing something that I would benefit from because and obviously my whole life changed when I walked through to AA. That happens like I don't feel like going to church today. I end up going to church and whoa, what an experience. Or I don't want to go on to that guy's house and meet all those strange people and I don't know what's going to be there. I don't know what they're and then you have a wonderful time and you go, what was I so afraid of? What was my first reaction? Is the anxiety is an excuse for me to do nothing. And sometimes I project that onto other people. It's your excuse for that you're going to miss out if you don't do this. Any thoughts on that? It kind of helped me hash things out in my own head, so I appreciate that. Eric, what are you thinking about? You're very contemplative there, Eric.
My natural look.
That's good.
No, I mean it's such an interesting perspective. Because I don't know, it's like, what do I always want to do? Like, if nothing. You know, it's like, do I always want to do nothing? Like, yeah, I'm gonna make an excuse to do nothing.
All right.
I'll never forget my high school biology teacher. His classroom was a disaster, and his house was a disaster. And he told us that, and we're like, well, why? And he said, well, everything moves towards disorder. Like everything always moves towards disorder, even from a molecular point of view. Um, is that the reason we all, not we all, like some people want to get out and do things, but like for me, I have to pump myself up. And like you, I always feel better after I do it. But do I want to do it? I'm always leaning towards no. Um, that's my perspective. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking through that. Like I'm the same way. I always want to move toward disorder, which is laziness to me. But because if you're putting energy into it, you're doing it. It takes energy. You feel better afterwards, but everything inside you wants to do the opposite.
And again, that's a double-edged sword too, because there is times to, you know, like, am I being lazy or is this what I really need right now? You know, I need to rest, and I have that lazy button that my mom and dad installed in me, you know, that you're just being lazy. I have that button installed. You know, like, what are you doing inside watching a baseball game at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday? It's beautiful outside. Get outside and play. What's wrong with you? Get out there and do something. Wow, where did that come from? Sharon, it's about your time to comment. We appreciate your commentary. At least I do.
I actually found your, you know, how you're defining it regarding a coward or something that you don't want to do. I find this concept fascinating. I think there's a nugget of truth here in terms of that fear that I always think of inertia, right? We sort of sit in that inertia, almost as Eric is saying, you almost want to be lazy. You don't want to move to a different point, even though you know certain change is really good for you. So I do wonder if there is a piece of anxiety that not just physical, but really sits in our brain around not wanting to change. And being fearful of stepping forward and the comfort of even if there's discomfort, but there's comfort in the chaos that you know, right? So people don't move through that to another stage. So I'm just thinking about all of this and it clicks for me. It really makes sense.
It's also,
Anxiety is fear, right?
it could be. Well, I also think that the primal instinct that I just like saw myself like 10,000 years ago sitting in a cave. Me safe. Me no go out there. I got food, fire. I'm good. Me safe. You know, nothing's forcing me to go anywhere. I'm sorry, Eric. I'm not right. See what you're gonna miss all these next weeks. This is me just being normal, but I think, you know, maybe there is some of that really deep-seated, like, I'm safe right now. I don't want to go do that. I don't need to go do that. I don't really care about growth. And then so I use anxiety like to kind of keep me inert. Like I love that word. Yeah.
I think that stress and nervousness are more of the superficial. You can get beyond fairly easily, but I do think anxiety is more entrenched, as you said, deep rooted.
Yeah.
That sits in our, our body, our soul, in a way that can really be debilitating. So I see anxiety as much more of an impairment than stress because I'm going to speak somewhere or I'm
Yeah.
getting nervous. I have an interview.
Yeah.
I think that's the norm for most humans, right? When there's something new and novel coming up. But I do see anxiety as a much more deep rooted issue that really can be all consuming.
Yeah, that's well said. I appreciate that very much. I think, you know, over the last several years too, I've really made it my mantra and my motto to enjoy life, to enjoy each moment as best I can. And when I might have been inclined to sit, and sit because I'm usually worn myself out during the day because I'm trying to do things that I enjoy and trying to find new things that I enjoy, which produces a certain amount of nervousness and, knock your pride down. Like, uh, next spring and summer, maybe even this winter, I want to learn how to surf, as soon as I can. In my late 60s, I'm going to want to learn how to surf. Will I be good at it right away? Heck no. Would putting on that wetsuit and getting on a surfboard and paddling out be nerve-wracking? Heck yeah. But will I be anxious about it? I don't know. I think I'm old enough now and set in my ways that it's okay to be bad at something for a while, but as long as I enjoy it. Wow. Travis, what are you up to now?
Well, just listening to you, thinking about what I want to say or what I don't want
Yeah.
to say. Um, like I don't think there's any, as we know, any one size fits all approach to this and to addressing anxiety or nervousness in another person. But I think a thing we can do is gain an understanding of how they want to move forward in that moment. A question I like to ask is, do you want the blanket or do you want the sword? Do you want comfort or do you want truth? And maybe that's treating them like a recipient a little bit in that moment, right? Choose either or. Maybe
No,
how
that's
would
cool.
you like to move forward in this
No,
conversation?
I
How
like
can we
that.
address
Blanket
it?
and sword is good.
But it helps because maybe it is comfort that individual needs in the
Sure.
moment. I try to think, if it's me in that situation, sometimes I need a hug, sometimes I need a kick in the ass. Said it
Right.
a little, didn't say it quite as nicely as you did, Phil, but
No,
it's going to vary person to person, situation to situation, and I think it all goes back to that quest for the question, like you've said for so long, right?
the art of coaching too.
Right.
That's your art of knowing when. And I don't think we let our fear, we just trust our instinct. And
Mm-hmm.
you could be wrong once in a while, but it's unlikely, delivered the right way, it's usually received pretty well. Oh, you guys really helped me unravel some things, so I appreciate it. Some of the thinking I have in my head and, what I think about allowing people their anxiety. Do I allow them to have it? Like it's my choice anyway. Like I have any say in the matter. I don't think I do. If you want your anxiety, you're welcome to it. I just don't want to live that way. I don't. So I would do things to remind me of that. All right. So thank you all. Thoroughly enjoyed the coaching for coaches session. See you next time.